The start of the Occupy Wall Street movement, highlighting unpunished crimes on Wall Street and the problem of wealth inequality in the United States. A new study by economists Emmanuel Saez and Thomas Piketty shows that the Occupy movement and its message are still very relevant to today. That's because, according to this new research, the top 10% of income earners in the United States took home more than half of all the income in the country. That's the highest level ever recorded in the last century. But that's not all. The top 1%, just 1% of Americans took home a fifth of all the income earned by all Americans. That, too, is one of the highest levels of inequality ever measured in the last 100 years. Now, this chart clearly shows that since the 1980s, it's been good times for the super wealthy in the United States. But what's behind this, and what effect is this inequality having on our economy as well as our social fabric? Well, here to answer that is Richard Eskow, Senior Fellow, the Campaign for America's Future. Richard, nice to talk with you again.
Good to be here.
The last time the income share of the top 1% was close to this high was before the Great Depression in 1929 and before the Great Recession in 2008. Should that be a warning sign? And what is it about too much wealth concentrated at the top that drives economic crises?
Well, there are slow crises and fast crises, and when you have too much wealth at the top, the slow crisis is that everyone else's income is stagnating, there aren't enough jobs, there isn't enough money circulating for people to buy the goods and services that they want and need, so that leads to unemployment. That's a slow crisis. The connection between this concentration of wealth and the kind of immediate crisis you're talking about, whether it's the Great Depression or the recession, is the nature of the wealth that gets concentrated at the top, which is wealth from stocks, wealth from speculation, wealth from highly risky financial investments. So usually when you see an enormous concentration of wealth at the top, it means that we're accumulating that kind of wealth, which is very volatile and very risky. And that's what we've seen. That's what we saw before the Great Crash. We saw a lot of speculation, bubbles in the stock market, a lot of gambling. We saw a lot of that again after the deregulation of the 90s in the mortgage securities market and the derivatives market and elsewhere. And what this is telling us now when we see this accumulation happening again, two things. One is we didn't rescue the economy. We created a recovery for the rich and a recession for the rest. That's number one. And number two is because we did it that way, because we emphasized that kind of growth in wealth, not only are the 99% suffering, but we're going back to a risky, market-based, volatile economy.
Right, and as you pointed out, I mean, since the recession, a lot of the top 1% are doing just fine now, if not doing better. Yet, with each new job report, we hear about the creation of brand new low-wage service sector jobs for the rest of us, not high-paying jobs. And it's been remarked that this is the new American economy. Do you agree, and how does that contribute to this growing inequality that we see?
Well, it's the American economy they have in mind for us. It certainly doesn't need to be the new American economy, but it's the one that a lot of people in power and a lot of people with influence and money would like to see, which is an economy of enormous wealth accumulation at the top, combined with a high unemployment, low wage service economy for the rest of us. And yet, you know, it's fascinating, Sam, because if you talk to some of these folks, they're also historically savvy enough that some of them are very frightened because they know that an economy like that is unstable and threatens social unrest and threatens political unrest. So they're basically in the mindset of let's grab everything we can out of this, what you describe as the new American economy, and if it blows up, hopefully we'll have enough to take our money and perhaps our lives somewhere else.
So this is all happening under, we're 5 years into the presidency of Barack Obama. He's floated the idea of cutting Social Security, raising the retirement age on Medicare. What does that do to the legacy of a party, to this party that has a legacy of working on behalf of working people? And where do working people turn to now to kind of remedy this in just the last 30 seconds we have here?
Okay, you know, I always think of Neil Young's line about the kinder, gentler machine gun hand when I think about the notion that the Democrats are the party of more humane administration of a receding economy. I think the answer is that people need to press their elected representatives to speak for their interests, and people need to get out in the streets if necessary, and people need to express their opinions every way they can that this is unacceptable.
Richard Eskow, Senior Fellow at the Campaign